For those of you who are joining us today, or maybe it's your first time here, or maybe you're just kind of newer in general to us, as you have heard, my name is Michael, and a year ago, November, I joined the staff here at Grace, where I now serve as your church's executive pastor. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Didn't even have to ask for it. That's great. Those of you that are applauding have not yet fully gotten to know me, so it's fine. But anyway, as most of you know, my family and I moved out here to Northeast Ohio from Southern California. It was quite a shift, I will tell you that. Some of you are going, yeah, there's a lapse in judgment right there, right? Like, that was the primary question. Why would you move here? And anyway, we lived in Southern California all of our lives before coming here, and other than the handful of staff and a couple of elders that we had met in our discussions, we moved out here not knowing a soul. No friends, no family that caused the move. We just knew that God was calling us here. And we surrendered and said yes, and here we are a year later. I think at that time it was a state-to-state swap. I moved out here from Southern California, and my predecessor, Pastor Matt, moved out to Northern California. We just didn't want the country to tip on its access because he and I switched places. As you know, there's been a little bit of a migration out of that great state of California, and I'm just going to leave that right there. Anyway, as you might expect over the course of this past year, my family and I have enjoyed all of the typical transitions and changes that you might expect in a move of that magnitude. We have enjoyed new jobs, new schools, a new house, new town, new church, new and on and on and on. And one of the most interesting, most challenging changes of this past year was one that wasn't even on our radar. We had no idea that this challenge would exist. And that was the transition and adjustment to new foods. New food. We've got new grocery stores, different restaurants, new food brands even in those grocery stores, new everything. Well, about a month ago, middle of December, my family and I flew back out to Southern California to have an early Christmas time with all of our extended family. And as much as we love and we were anxious to see our family, the first thing we did to prepare for that trip was create an immediate list of the places we wanted to eat. I will just say it, God bless you folks, you try to make Mexican food out here, you just don't. Just gonna say it. One of the photos I sent back to the staff, of all things, was a photo of a grocery store. Here, there's like a Mexican food section. There, it was a whole aisle in the grocery store. And I'm like, oh, praise Jesus, this is so good. Anyway, of all the places that we wanted to eat when we went back to Southern California, on the top of the list, without question, was In-N-Out Burger, right? In-N-Out Burger. All due respect, there is nothing out here like In-N-Out Burger, not Sonic, not Smash Burger, not Steak and Shake, not Five Guys. Nothing compares to In-N-Out. I mean, just look at that picture up there. That is not an internet picture. That is the picture of my burger that I ate at that In-N-Out in Southern California. We hadn't even been off the plane 30 minutes, and we were at In-N-Out Burger. My mom came and picked us up at the airport. I love my mom. We all gave her a really quick hug. We threw our luggage into the back of her truck and said, now take us to In-N-Out. To In-N-Out we went. Again, that's a picture of the In-N-Out we went to in Palm Desert, and that's a picture of the burger I ate. Now, some of you were like, who takes pictures of those things? Well, I will tell you, I didn't take those pictures right there for myself. I took those pictures and I texted them to Pastor Caleb's in-laws, because Jasmine's mom and dad are also from Southern California. And I took those pictures, I texted them to Chris Hines kind of as a na-na-na-na-na, look what I'm eating moment. Right, Chris? There you go. We've got some California folks here, right? Where are my California people at? In-N-Out Burger, right? All God's people said, yes, you know. By the way, for you California folks, just tell you, I just recently read the press release that they're actually bringing In-N-Out to Tennessee in 2024. Now, here, the good news is that it's coming. The bad news is that's just a corporate headquarters, and the restaurant might not be till 26. So we will pray intensely, because I'm telling you, if there truly is a good God in heaven, then we will see an In-N-Out Burger right here in Northeast Ohio, right here in the Mahoning Valley. Oh, please may it be so, sweet, sweet Jesus. Make it be so. And again, all God's people said, amen. So as it's been prayed, so shall it be. In Jesus' name. You might notice in that picture, you see a couple other signs in the distant backdrop. Carl's Jr. And then you'll see one kind of tucked right back there called Del Taco. Those applause you just heard are from my California friends. Okay? Del Taco, that was another absolute must on our list. We've got to go eat at Del Taco. I think we had Del Taco about 4 or 5 hours after In-N-Out. But anyway, I know we've got Taco Bell just right up the street, right? And we had Taco Bell in Southern California too. But the battle between Taco Bell and Del Taco is the same as the battle between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Y'all know that battle, right? You cannot be on both sides. You choose a side. Okay, where are my Pepsi people at? Yeah. Where are my Coca-Cola people? Yeah, Pepsi people are like, Coca-Cola. Well, can I just tell you, Pepsi-Cola owns Taco Bell. Just do that math. That'll explain a whole lot. But anyway, y'all know what I'm talking about. You're like, I didn't know that. But yeah, Pepsi-Cola owns Taco Bell. That's why you get Pepsi there and not Coca-Cola. But again, you know in that battle, you are either in one camp or the other. You cannot be in both. So the closest Del Taco to here is in Columbus. It's still Ohio Del Taco, but it's Del Taco. And my family and I have made that 3-hour drive just to go eat at Del Taco. Don't laugh. You shouldn't be surprised of such behavior, the crazy behavior of a guy who leaves Southern California for Northeast Ohio, so I'm just saying. Anyway, I know you're all wondering why in the world is he talking about hamburgers and burritos and Del Taco and In-N-Out and all of those kinds of things. Well, I will tell you because in a roundabout way, that's what we're going to be talking about today in general. 2 weeks ago, Pastor Roy kicked off a brand new 6-week sermon series called Blessed to be a Blessing, which is all about 5 simple ways to love your neighbor. And we've been kind of playing with this acronym BLESS. B, begin with prayer. L, listen. And today, E, eat or share a meal together. And the next 2 weeks will be the 2 S's of serve and story. Now, I don't know what it is or why it is, but there is something about food, something specifically about sharing a meal that can have a massive impact on all of us as human beings. For example, there is something about our favorite restaurants, as I have just illustrated with In-N-Out and Del Taco, there's something about our favorite restaurants that can root in us some kind of a sense of home. Growing up, my family celebrated every family birthday, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of us, every family birthday was celebrated at an Italian restaurant called The Mug. The Mug was run by a guy named Tony, who prior to running that restaurant, he was a member of Mario Andretti's pit crew. He had some stories. There's always dinner and a story from Tony. I know a guy named Tony. Hey. For my wife, Julie, and her family, they spent their birthdays and special family times at another Italian restaurant out near LA called Frantone's. There's also something about our favorite meals and recipes that can evoke in all of us a sense of family. Growing up, everybody in my family loved my Grandma Quill's skinny pancakes. Skinny pancakes are kind of like crepes. You open it up flat on the plate and you put right down in the middle of it, you add fresh fruit, blackberries, raspberries, sliced strawberries, sliced bananas, and you roll it up nice and tight, cover it with homemade syrup, and dust it with powdered sugar. Who wants some skinny pancakes for breakfast? I'm done, let's go eat. I'm telling you, sweet Jesus, those were good, skinny pancakes. Grandma's skinny pancakes. Well, now I can tell you that Grandma's skinny pancakes have been a staple of our family's special moments. Birthdays in my house, skinny pancakes for breakfast. Mother's Day, Father's Day, skinny pancakes for lunch because we're here with you in the morning. Back home a couple weeks ago in California with my mom and my sister's family and my family together, it was skinny pancakes for breakfast. For my wife's family, they've got Norwegian blood. For them, every year at Christmas, it's making lefse, making rosettes together. If you know what rosettes are, ultralight little pastry with powdered sugar on it. Oh my God, it's good. And now, Julie and I have passed all of those down to our girls. They know how to make all of those things. But I can tell you, we passed it down. It's far more than a sense of tradition in our family. It's actually somehow become our connection as family. In fact, have you ever noticed that think about all of your gatherings that you have, whether it's with family or friends, have you noticed that they almost always circle around a meal? Almost always. Holidays, meals. Birthdays, meals. Simple lunches and dinners, always center around meals, because that's what friends and family do, right? The power of those meals, it just doesn't stop there. Friendships are often built and forged and started over a shared meal together. There are a number of couples and families here in this church that have now become like family to my family. And most of those new relationships we have with a handful of you have started over you inviting us to share a meal. Two nights ago, Friday night, handful of us, the Hines family, their young boy Max had a birthday. And they were, 27, 28 of us all sitting at a massive table at El Jalapeno right up here. Again, it was a good attempt at Mexican food. God bless you. It's a good attempt. Out here, a wet burrito is covered with this white cheesy sauce. What is that? Queso. In California, you want a wet burrito? You order a wet burrito, they're going to say, what sauce do you want, green or red? Right? It's different. Anyway, there's 27 of us there. 28, I don't know. That wasn't even everybody who was invited. The Hineses were overwhelmed at the reality that they've been here in Ohio maybe 10 months now, 11 months now. And everybody at that table, with the exception of Caleb and Jasmine, was brand new in their lives, sharing a meal. We were among them, came out here 3 months before they did, sitting at a table full of people that a year or so ago, we had no idea you had existed. A shared meal brought all of that together. Coworkers get closer and can even become friends. Oftentimes that begins with lunches together. Business gets transacted at business luncheons, business dinners. Sharing meals is an integral part of our existence in our lives. Sharing meals together has always been an important part of the life of the church. Whether it's cooking meals for church members in need, or how about the good old-fashioned church potluck? I say if there's any tradition worth hanging on to in the church, it's the potluck. How many of you like the good old-fashioned church potluck? Okay, good. Some of you are going, what is that, right? How many of you like to cook for a potluck? Wait, keep your hands up. I'm going to take a picture because we're going to call on you. You're hosting lunch next week. I remember the last potluck we had at our church in California. The potluck, it was fun, but almost everything on the table was bought at the grocery store or at a takeout place, something like that. People don't cook out there much anymore. So if you're a good cook, can I just tell you, I want to get to know you. Sharing meals together was a foundational way to pull the church together, and it's always been that way from the church's very beginning. Take a look at Acts chapter 2, verses 44 to 47. It says, and all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day. They met in homes for the Lord's Supper and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. I love that last line. And each day more were being added to their numbers daily. Now, it's important to point out that they didn't share their meals out of an obligation. They didn't share their meals as some act of obedience to any commands of Jesus. Thou shalt share meals. They simply did it because that's what friends and family do. That's just what we do as friends and family. That's really what we read in those 4 verses. I think we could sum those 4 verses up this way by simply saying that they all became friends and then they began treating each other like family. That's what the early church did. Because again, that's what families do. But I want to tell you, as much as they just did that because that's what we do as friends and family, there was something even more to that. It was also a strategy. It was part of a strategy that Jesus himself often used to positively engage and draw people to himself. You know what a strategy is, right? A strategy is a calculated plan of action designed to accomplish specific outcomes, right? So Jesus shared meals with people as part of his calculated plan to accomplish specific outcomes. I've got news for you. Sharing meals with people was more than just sharing food. It was actually about Jesus sharing himself with people. And as his followers, that should inspire us to want to do the same. One of my favorite Christian authors, Henry Nouwen, wrote the following about the power of eating together. He wrote this. He said, "When we invite others for a meal, we do much more than offer them food for their bodies. We offer them friendship. We offer them fellowship. We offer them good conversation and intimacy and closeness. When we say, 'Help yourself, take some more. Don't be shy, have another glass,' we offer our guests not only our food and drink, but also ourselves. A spiritual bond grows, and we become food and drink for one another." Friends, a lot of Jesus' ministry took place around the dinner table, so to speak. In fact, in the Gospel of Luke, there are 10 different instances of Jesus engaging and ministering to people while sharing a meal with them. And throughout the New Testament, you can also read about 37 miracles that Jesus performed. I'm sure he performed more, but there are 37 of them recorded in the New Testament. And the overwhelming majority of those involve Jesus physically healing people, not just to heal them, but so that they might experience the love of our Father. There were 3 or 4 random miracles, like Jesus cursing a fig tree and causing it to wither and die. But then there were also 2 incredible instances where he miraculously provided a meal for tens of thousands of people. Jesus fed 4,000. It was 4,000 men. He also fed 5,000 men. Back then in that context, they would have recorded the men, but when you had wives and children, there would have been at least 8,000 to 10,000 people at each of those moments. You want to talk about a potluck? And then there was, of course, a wedding where he miraculously gave them all something to drink. And in our time together today, I want to take a deeper look at just 2 of those moments where Jesus strategically shared a meal with some people. First one's found in Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. Let me quickly set the stage for you. Jesus had been ministering to and healing people in the town of Capernaum, which was a small town that sat alongside the shore of the Sea of Galilee. In fact, for any of you who are going on our church's trip to Israel in April, I think when you travel in northern Israel, I think you're going to have a stop in Capernaum, which today goes by the name of Kfar Nahum. Anyway, Jesus had spent a few days ministering to and healing people in Capernaum, and that's where we join in this story, Matthew chapter 9. Let's begin with verses 9 through 11. And as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth. "Follow me and be my disciple," Jesus said to him. So Matthew got up and followed him. Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. But when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with such scum?" The first part of their question kind of cracks me up a little bit. Why does your teacher, right? It kind of sounds like one parent talking to another parent when they're angry about something the kid did. Why does your son or your daughter do this? Did you hear what your daughter did? What's happening in this moment by saying your teacher, these Pharisees were the religious leaders. They were the teachers, the religious teachers of that time. Jesus, also a rabbi, so he was a religious leader, also a teacher in that time. And that was the Pharisees' way of saying, they thought, hey, this Jesus should be acting a whole lot more like them. And so in saying your teacher, they were declaring he's not one of us. That guy who's not one of us, your teacher, why does he sit with such scum? We're going to come back to that verse in a minute, but let's take a look at verses 12 and 13 now for Jesus' response. When Jesus heard this, he said, "Healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do." Then he added, "Now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices." And right here, when he says, go learn the meaning of this scripture, he was referring to the prophet Hosea, Hosea 6:6 in your Bible, Hosea 6:6. And they would have known this reference really, really well. These religious leaders, they knew exactly what Jesus is referring to there. And then he says this, he says, "For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners." There's an intentionality here. There's a strategy here. Let's take a minute, let's circle back to that word we read moments ago, disreputable. Let's talk a little bit more about Matthew as we do it. That word disreputable means scandalous, notorious, and infamous. Matthew and his friends were considered the worst of the worst that town had to offer. The worst of the worst, not good church folks, not even good people, the trash of the town. That's who they were. You see, Matthew was a hated and despised man in Capernaum. Hated, utterly and thoroughly hated. Why? Because he was a tax collector. You're going, what's so bad about that? Well, let me ask you a question. How many of you have a deep love for the IRS? Nobody likes the tax man, right? But Matthew was seen as even worse than that. You see, Matthew was a Jewish man. He was collecting taxes from Jewish people, giving those taxes to Rome. The Romans were the oppressive rulers over the Jews, almost a slave-master kind of relationship. And even more than that, in order to make a living himself, it wasn't like the Romans were paying Matthew to do it. Collect these taxes or die. So Matthew was then adding a premium, as much as he could get away with, on top of those taxes to make a living for himself. All of that to say, Matthew was seen as the worst kind of traitor to his own people. And because he was a Jew, he was also despised by the Romans. The Romans looked at Matthew and the fact that he worked for them, they saw him as nothing more than a dog on their leash, under their control. Matthew, hated by his own people and hated by the people he collected taxes for. And so the only other people that would have even dared to associate with Matthew were those who, for whatever reason, were just as deeply despised and considered just as disreputable as Matthew was. And so it is to that man that Jesus walks up to and says, "Hey, Matthew, why don't you get on out of there and come hang out with me?" And it absolutely blew the minds. In fact, it infuriated the religious people. It infuriated a lot of people, for that matter. Can you imagine how the handful of the disciples that were there must have responded? I'm willing to bet. I mean, I wasn't there. But I'm willing to bet it looked maybe something like this. "Jesus, have you done gone lost your ever-loving mind? Seriously, Jesus, what in the world are you No, not that guy. We ain't hanging out with that guy. And we're not hanging out with anybody who hangs out with that guy. You lost your mind, Jesus? You have any idea what this is going to do to your reputation, how people are going to look at you?" Now here's the real motive. Do you have any idea what it's going to do to us and how people are going to look at us if we hang out with them too? Jesus is like, "Hey, you think it's bad that I invited him to hang out with us? Wait till the party pops off at his house later tonight." Because that's what happened. House was filled with Matthew's people. And then all of their fears and concerns and hesitation was certainly confirmed when the Pharisees walked up to those disciples and said, "Why does your teacher eat with such scum?" If he hangs out with trash, then he must be trash too. And if you hang out with him, you must be trash. That's what was happening in that moment. Not just one. It happened often after this one. Take a look now at Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10, at another moment, which is almost identical to this one. Jesus then entered the town of Jericho and made his way through the town. And there was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region. We're talking like he's the head of the IRS. This is the big boss. And he had become very rich. He was trying to get a look at Jesus, but was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. "Zacchaeus!" This is in front of the whole crowd now. "Zacchaeus, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your house today." I love how he invited himself. And I got to believe the disciples were right there going, "For the love of God, here we go again." Verse 6, Zacchaeus quickly climbed down, took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. Verse 7, but the people were displeased. "He's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner," they grumbled. "There he go again. He going hanging out with those people. Zacchaeus was yet another notorious sinner, and Jesus was the trash man. And Jesus did this often enough that he began taking hits everywhere he went from the religious elites, the legalists, the spiritual snobs. On another occasion, back in Luke chapter 7, verse 34, Jesus says this. He says, the Son of Man, that's one of the ways Jesus often referred to himself. The Son of Man, on the other hand, eats and drinks, and you say he's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and other sinners. And of course we know he wasn't a drunk, he wasn't a glutton. It's just that he spent so much time with people who were, he got accused of doing the same often. Church, you got to hear that this morning. He spent so much time with people who were, he got accused of it often. You see, the Pharisees, the religious elite, the legalists, the spiritual snobs, they really believed that people like Zacchaeus and Matthew and all others like them were somehow beneath them, below them. They believed that they were dirty, filthy people. They looked down upon those people. They distanced themselves from those people. And then they utterly attacked, scolded, and shamed anybody who dared go and engage them. Why does your teacher hang out with such scum? But before we are so quick to point out how obviously sideways they were back then, I think we need to be honest about just how sideways we still are in a lot of ways today. You see, the guest at Matthew's house would have offended most people in most churches today. You ate with who? You went to where? And they were doing what? The guest list at Matthew's house would have offended most people in most churches today. It was the worst of the worst in town. In fact, in most churches today, Jesus would probably be pulled aside and chastised by some for having a poor witness, for having ever been at that house with those people. I will tell you very honestly, you have no right to tell anybody they have a poor witness. The only person who can say your witness is positive or negative is Jesus himself. You okay? I love you. Let's eat. In churches everywhere today, we still have at least some amount of a lingering stench of the sour spirit of people who insist on avoiding those people. And then they further reveal that sour spirit by chastising others who do engage those people just the same way that the Pharisees chastised the disciples. Why does your teacher eat with such scum? You may remember that back in Matthew 9:13, Jesus told those sour-spirited Pharisees to go and learn the meaning of this scripture. That I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. And again, he's quoting the prophet Hosea, whose words they would have known really, really, really well. But what he was also making clear was that while they certainly knew what Hosea said, they really didn't understand what Hosea meant. While they knew God's words through the prophet, they knew those words. They had no idea what those words really meant. Being the good religious people that they were, they certainly made their sacrifices to God. But they clearly gave no mercy whatsoever to those people. They religiously made their sacrifices to God, but they had completely missed the sacrifice, Jesus, that God in his mercy had sent to embrace those people. The same thing happens today too. There are people in churches everywhere who know what God's word says, but then somehow miss what God's word really means. For example, in all my years of ministry, I can't tell you how many times I have encountered modern day Pharisees who are insistent that we should not be engaging those people, that we should not be letting those people to come in and defile the church or make it somehow more worldly. Can I just tell you this morning that the collective sins of the members of any church is all you will ever need to defile and make any church worldly? You all right? Okay. Don't worry, Pastor Roy will be back next week. It'll be good. People like this attempt to justify their position with certain verses, like Psalm 1:1, which says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, nor stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers." And they incorrectly interpret verses like this one. I mean, see, we shouldn't be spending time or even associating with those people. Don't be around the wicked. Don't be with sinners. Don't be in the company of mockers. If you stay away from them, you'll be blessed. This is what it says, but that's not what this means. If that's what this verse means, then Jesus was the biggest of all sinners when he sat with Matthew and Zacchaeus at their house. This does not say that you should not walk, sit, or stand with those people. What it says is don't walk in step with. Don't stand in the same way that. And don't sit in the company so comfortably that no one can tell you apart from them. It doesn't say you shouldn't be with them. What it says is you shouldn't look exactly like them. There should be something about you in the middle of Matthew's house that makes you look a little different. Jesus and the boys went to Matthew's house, and it didn't change Jesus and the boys, it changed Matthew. Jesus and the boys went to Zacchaeus' house, and it didn't change Jesus and the boys, it changed Zacchaeus. So when Jesus went and shared a meal with people like Matthew and Zacchaeus, he wasn't being sinful, he wasn't being reckless, he wasn't being irresponsible, and he certainly didn't have a poor witness. No, again, he was being strategic. Sharing a meal with them was part of his calculated plan of action, designed to accomplish specific outcomes. He came like a doctor for the sick, not the healthy, Matthew 9:12. And he came to seek and save those who were lost, Luke 19:10. Jesus was simply doing exactly what he had strategically planned to come and do. And if you know the end of both of those stories, then you know that Matthew not only became a follower of Jesus, but his handwritten account of his life with Jesus has become one of the most read things in all of history. It's called the Gospel of Matthew, and it's found at the beginning of our New Testament. And as for Zacchaeus, he not only became a follower of Jesus too, but he also repaid everybody that he ever cheated on their taxes fourfold. How many of you would love a fourfold refund from the IRS? And here we are still talking about him some 2,000 plus years later, and we're still teaching our kids to sing a song about that wee little man. Dave Ferguson, author of the book Bless, which has sparked some of the inspiration for this series, he had this to say about Jesus' strategy of sharing a meal with people. He says, I'm not sure we really grasped how big a deal eating was in Jesus' culture. It was a statement of friendship. It was also an affirmation of a person's value, dignity, and worth. Who you ate with also indicated who you loved and considered to be part of your social class. That's why it was so scandalous. Look at that word, scandalous, to the religious leaders that he frequently ate with the lowest and most hated people of the day. Respectable rabbis, respectable, good Christians, don't eat with those people who weren't part of the good people group. Every year, back in Big Bear, California, we always went to, on the 4th of July, we always had a massive celebration. In Big Bear, we had one of California's top 10 fireworks shows over our lake. And there were only about 19,000 people who actually lived in Big Bear, but every year on the 4th of July, somewhere between 180 and 200,000 people from Southern California would come and line the outskirts of our lake to watch our fireworks show. Almost a half-hour long, set to music, coordinated with the local radio station. I mean, it was incredible. And we always watched it on our boat because we go out on the boat in the lake and you can just lay like this and the fireworks are booming right over your head. In the last fireworks show that we were able to go see there, we decided to go spend that time on a friend's boat, another family in the church. We're going to hang out with them and share a meal with them on their boat and watch the fireworks show. And both our wives and kids were already on the boat. My buddy and I, he went and we were carrying the ice chest with the food and all of those things back out the dock to get to his boat. And on the way out there, I happened to turn to the right and see a guy I knew in town sitting in a boat with two other guys, and he flipped me off as I was walking by. He flipped me off. So I tell my buddy, you go on ahead. I'm going to stop talking to this guy right here because, again, I knew him and so on. And I walked over, and he's sitting with two other guys. And as soon as I go over to the edge of the dock and right there, I could tell that they were all fairly lubricated, we shall say. And he immediately looks at his buddies, and he goes, do you know what the F this guy does for a living? This guy's an effing pastor. I don't mean to be crass. I'm just giving you a little color of the conversation, okay? But he says that to his guys. And one of them's like, no S? By the way, I'm giving the first letter. Those of you that laugh, I know it's a confession laugh. I know. Thank you. Again, just give me a little color of the conversation. I'm like, no, it's serious. I'm a pastor. And before I know it, they're asking me tons of questions. How'd you become a pastor? All of that. And I give kind of like the 3-minute testimony. And then I just start sharing with him about Jesus. Well, eventually I get done with them, shake hands, whatever, get up, go back out to the boat. My buddy's waiting on me. And when I get there, he is livid. He's like, I can't believe that they flipped you off. And not only that, you were okay with it. Like, you're a man of position and status in this community. You're a pastor, for crying out loud. You can't let people do that to you publicly. I can't believe you let them disrespect you like that. And I looked at him and said, wait a minute, you got things all wrong, man. He wasn't saying F you, he was saying, hey you, in his own way. Some of you know, right? That's just how some people talk. It's a noun, a verb, and an adjective. I said, do you know what I just spent the last 20 minutes doing? No. Well, I just spent the last 20 minutes talking about Jesus. He says, well, how'd they respond to that? I said, they shook my hand and said, thank you. But the reason my friend was so offended for me is that it's because he was not comfortable being around those people. And without even realizing it, he had become a spiritual elite. He had no idea how much of a Pharisee he had become. And when I got to his boat, he gave me his equivalent of, why did you sit with such scum? And my answer was, because Jesus sent us to go sit with such scum. And truth be told, at some level, we are all that scum. Jesus didn't just hang out with sinners. Jesus didn't just let them hang out with him. Jesus pursued them. He engaged them. He embraced them. He lived with them. He invested in them. And he often did all of that most strategically and most effectively by sharing meals with people. And maybe, just maybe, we should do the same. I also played in a softball league in the evenings in Big Bear with some of Big Bear's finest. Rough folks. Most of them half drunk on any given night during any given game. And 2 weeks later, that same man who said, hey you, to me, half drunk, we sat on the bleachers for 2 hours after the last game in the dark as he poured out his soul about his impending divorce. And over the course of that first year, I developed a nickname in the entire baseball, softball world in that community. Everybody affectionately called me the Rev. He sent us to pursue, not to hide away from, those people. We start to land this plane. That means I'm almost done. Almost. Not quite, but almost. I really wrestled with this sermon this week. I was talking about this with Pastor Roy a couple days ago. I wrestled with this sermon because from a content standpoint, this is a pretty easy sermon. It's a pretty easy series to preach. I mean, it's all pretty familiar stuff. I mean, nothing new. Go bless others, right? But from an action standpoint, I think it's truly one of the most difficult sermons to preach ever. And let me tell you why. Sermons like the ones that Pastor Roy and I are preaching in this series, they are easy from the position of telling you what to, why to, and how to. But the truth is, Pastor Roy and I have absolutely no control whatsoever over your want to. Oh yeah, this is what to, why to, and how to. But at the end of the day, you got to come up with your own want to. We can't do anything about that. And the one thing I don't want to do is try to pressure you or shame you into something. But this series is all about us trying to encourage you, maybe even inspire you to go and be a blessing. But the overwhelming majority of us, and we live our lives, and we come to church week after week, really honestly seeking to be blessed ourselves. Worship wasn't good this morning. I just didn't feel it. I just wasn't really feeling the sermon. Humbly, respectfully, that's on you. That's on you. I'm here to tell you this morning, as plainly as I know how, that the way to be blessed in your life is to first go be a blessing to others. There's no other process. There's no other way. If you want to be blessed, then it starts by you going and being a blessing to others first. That's what it means to reap what you sow. If you sow blessings, you will reap blessings. Chris and Carolyn Hines arrived in Northeast Ohio 10 to 11 months ago, sowing blessings, and they had a full table of blessing in return. You get it. A lot of you get it. And I'm privileged to have been blessed by you. Being a blessing to others is the cause, and you being blessed yourself is then the effect. The blessing comes after you bless others. You reap after you sow, and yet so many of us get that backwards. And if you tend to get it backwards, it's because you are missing the fact that you're not blessing them because they've blessed you. You're blessing them because He has blessed you. And everything I'm telling, again, it's easy. It's familiar stuff. It's rooted in verses like 1 Corinthians 10:24, which many of you have heard many times. No one should seek their own good, but to seek the good of others. Many of you have heard Philippians 2:3, in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. And again, this series, while incredibly easy and familiar in content, it is incredibly tough in action because blessing others first is inherently contrary to, and it fights against your very human nature. We are all just kind of naturally hardwired to put ourselves at the top of our own lists. But what we are challenging you to do in this series is to deny your nature and take on His nature in its place. That's why this is so hard. Again, that's just the principle side of this. And then there's the whole practical side with something as deliberate as maybe sharing a meal with somebody. Oh, it's easy to share a meal with somebody that you already know, that you already like, and you already love. That's easy because that's just what friends and family do. But what's incredibly hard is to invite and to yearn to invite more people into that circle of your friends and family. That's hard. To proactively, strategically choose to share a meal with somebody who you don't really know, just so you actually can get to know them, that is somehow now in our culture become next level relationship. It's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me that we have hundreds, maybe even 1,000 friends on social media and yet have absolutely no idea who lives in the houses next to us on our street. And while I have, in fact, yes, I have downloaded the app that Pastor Roy recommended, which tells me now who my neighbors are so that I might pray for them, I still remember the days. And I have a renewed commitment to get back to the days when we knew who all of our neighbors were because we had actually knocked on their door with a smile. My dear Northeast Ohio friends, if you have gotten to truly know me at all in the year that I've been here, then you know that I am deeply passionate about what I'm talking about this morning. And I am so deeply passionate about this, not because I'm a pastor, not because some of this is in the Bible, because this is what Jesus did back then. I am so passionate about this because this is what Jesus did for me. I was once Matthew. I was once one of those people. I was an incredible sinner. Living my life no different than anybody else in the rest of the world, tragically far away from God, wanting absolutely nothing to do with those people in his church, in fact. I didn't want anything to do with his church. And then when I did first start going to church Sunday after Sunday, I walked in Sunday morning reeking of the hangover from Saturday night. If that's you, be careful. Look what happened to me. And I remember those first years. The church sang beautiful songs like "Come just as you are," but what they really meant was "Come, be just like we are." But the truth is, friends, at some point we were all those people. Apostle Paul says it this way in Romans 5:10. He says, we were all once enemies of God. I love this. Yet in Revelation 3:20, Jesus says this. He says, here I am. All of you enemies of God, all of you, those people, here I am. I stand at the door and knock, trying to invite myself in, knocking on a door with a smile. Here I am. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, if you just open that door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. Why does Jesus say he will eat with that person? Because that's what friends do. It says that Jesus is coming and offering his friendship. We are all those people, enemies of God even, and yet God responds by sending his son Jesus to come in friendship, offering us salvation from the consequences of our sin, and then to engage us in a relationship with him unlike anything we ever knew could be possible. Do you know what you call that, my friends? That's the gospel. That's the gospel. Last weekend, somebody in this room left an anonymous letter, handwritten, 2 full pages, handwritten letter in one of our offering boxes. Somehow it made its way, it ended up on my desk. And when I opened and read that letter, again, anonymous, I have no idea who wrote it, but this person poured out their heart, went into great detail about how they had been part of this church and other churches for quite some time, in one of our life groups even, and yet still doesn't really know if they're saved, doesn't really know if they really know Jesus, certainly doesn't feel connected here in the church, just poured out their heart. I would say this person has been hiding in plain sight among us. When I read that letter, it grabbed a hold of me. So I just want to say this morning, if you wrote it, I hear you. If you wrote it, I want to share a meal with you. I want to know you. I want you to know me. Find some way, please, to either tap me on the shoulder. A number of people are going to talk to me today, so no one's going to know it's you if it's you. Send me an email. Don't hide in plain sight anymore. I read that letter and I shared it with the elders last Monday night at our elder meeting. And I said, I bet there's 100 more just like this person in our church. I'm going to invite you all to close your eyes, bow your heads. Again, I say this every time I ask for that. Please just close your eyes and bow your heads. There's nothing magical about it. All I'm asking you to do is give everybody else in the room a little privacy. There's 3 groups I want to address this morning. The first group is this. If you resonate and feel like you have been hiding in plain sight, going through the motions, the church motions, but still somehow just feel disconnected, again, just eyes closed, heads bowed, I'm just going to invite you, just quietly drawing no attention to yourself, would you just raise your hand so I can get an idea? I see those hands. I see it. I see it. I see them. Look at those hands across this room. You can put your hands back down. Thank you for your honesty. For those of you that just raised your hand, please come see me. Please come see me. I want to know you. I want to introduce you to people, not as this was one who responded. This is my friend. And I want you to know and meet some other friends. For those of you that have been following Jesus for quite some time, maybe you have been inadvertently, maybe even intentionally, made a regular habit now of avoiding those people. And you're realizing and seeing how Jesus strategically pursued. Maybe you're realizing, hey, maybe it's time for a little bit of a heart recalibration in you. If that's you this morning, again, eyes closed, head bowed, drawing no attention to yourself, I would just encourage you, drawing no attention to yourself, but I'll just quietly raise your hand so I can celebrate with you that softening heart. God bless you. God bless you. I see those hands again. Look at those hands. Put your hands down. Lastly, for those of you that, for whatever reason, are not a follower of Jesus, it would be irresponsible of me to assume that everybody in church this morning or watching online has already said yes to him. Maybe you've had doubts. Maybe you've never understood. Maybe you've got hard questions. Maybe you just flat out don't believe. Maybe you're here today just to satisfy and avoid the pressure and argument of the person sitting next to you. Maybe you're plain and simply one of those people, or at least have felt that way all your life, and because of that, you've never leaned in. I want to tell you, if that's you this morning, you are in incredibly good company. We want to make Grace Fellowship Church in Northeast Ohio, here in Niles, to be a safe place for everybody to come and bring their doubts and their hard questions and their disbelief and get real answers. Nobody's inviting anybody into blind faith here. But if you know that you need Jesus, if you know He's calling you, He's pursuing you, like He pursued Zacchaeus, like He pursued Matthew, if you know that and today you want to say, yes, Jesus, doesn't mean you'll have it all figured out. It just means you're saying, yeah, let's share a meal, so to speak. Jesus, come into my life. Make me aware of who you are. If that's you, it's as simple as saying a prayer. No specific prayer, but let me give you an example. You can just repeat this after me, in fact. Jesus, I know you love me. Jesus, I know, I can feel it, I can sense it, that you have been pursuing me, knocking on my door. Today I want to say yes. Jesus, I want to know you. I want to experience you. I want to be saved by you. I believe that you paid the penalty for my sins. I believe that if I follow you, this will not be the end of my story. So Jesus, I give myself to you today. Ask your Holy Spirit to come into my life and lead me from this day forward. Jesus, I pray that in your name. Amen.